The esports market is growing exponentially, but as it does, some people are beginning to ask, will the esports bubble ever burst? Hi guys, and welcome to my Esports Insights series. Today we're going to be talking about the esports bubble, something that a lot of people have been mentioning over the course of the last few months, especially as we are now heading into the territory of franchised leagues. Will the esports bubble ever burst? It's certainly slowing down compared to projections that we had last year, but what is it in esports that's actually going to make money? Because a lot of people are investing money right now. I mean, they are throwing money at esports teams, they are throwing money at leagues, but what is it in esports that is actually going to provide you with a return on investment? Because that is what investors want. I feel like there's a big case of fear of missing out for a lot of investors right now. They hear the buzzword esports and they feel like they need to throw the money at it now while it is still feasible to buy into teams. Lots of people are raising questions though about teams specifically, raising questions about where their revenue is going to come from. How are they going to be able to activate revenue streams that are different to your traditional sporting teams, and whether the investments that the teams are receiving are worth it. With the newly introduced Overwatch League, the franchised NA/LCS, as well as the newly introduced League of Legends European LEC, teams are starting to receive fairly weighty investments. However, with those investments comes responsibility, and that's a responsibility to give a return on those investments. How do esports teams make money though? Before we delve into the predicted return on investments as well as the actual revenue of these teams, we need to know exactly how the esports teams generate their income. Well, they aren't really doing anything too different to traditional sporting teams. That in the sense that they get money from sponsorships, from companies that want to put their product on the team, they get revenue share from franchised leagues, they get money from advertising, they get money from prize pools that the players win in competitions, they sell their merchandise, and to some extent, teams take a percentage of the players' income too. That be it from streams, that be it from their own personal sponsorships that have to go through the team via contract. But esports teams don't really have a hugely different revenue model to our traditional sporting teams that we'd see in any North American franchised sporting league, for instance. So we're going to take a comparison between esports teams and all of the American franchised leagues and look at the revenue multipliers, and the valuation. The revenue multiplier is simply the revenue compared to the valuation of the team. So you can see here that there is some very, very high revenue multipliers on these esports teams, specifically TSM and Cloud9. They have revenue multipliers of 10 and above, all the way down to Immortals having a revenue multiplier of 20. Their revenues are tiny compared to almost any North American sports franchise league though, and you can see that a North American sports franchise league are getting multipliers between 5 and 8 with an average around 6. This is much, much lower, under 50% of the average revenue multiplier of an esports team. So why is it that we have got esports teams making virtually no money compared to a traditional sporting team, but getting valued in terms of revenue multipliers much like tech companies? Well, that's because there is an opportunity for esports teams in the future to operate like tech companies and expand, but that is where the pressure now comes on to esports teams. The problem with esports teams in general is a lot of their fan loyalty really comes down to the players that they have on their roster, and individual teams will often have players that are often considered bigger than the brand themselves, and therefore you'll find when a player moves team, often you'll lose a lot of the fan loyalty because they really follow the players to a majority extent. Some of the biggest examples in League of Legends are that of Bjergsen and Doublelift. Now, Bjergsen's not bigger than TSM, but he's certainly one of the biggest brand symbols, and if he were to leave TSM, it would be a huge blow for the organization. The players are assets to the team, and really they are the only assets that the team possesses. Unfortunately, unlike traditional sporting teams, the esports teams don't have a location tied to them. That is what the Overwatch League is trying to do, to try and tie a team to a location so that it generates a fan interest in the team based on their location as opposed to a fan interest based on the players. Overwatch is an experiment, however, and is one of the first leagues to tie teams to locations. Almost every other league in the world has teams running off their own branding, and therefore teams need to give reasons to fans to follow them. As with pretty much every sport, the best way to get fans to follow you is by being good, is by being the best team in your individual esport, and that comes with having the best players, hence making players much more of an asset to the team specifically. It's not like football or in NFL or whatever a sport you want to say, that if you live in a town, you often support that particular town or city. And even if they're doing badly, that's where you live, that's where you grew up, that's what you follow. If an esports team starts sucking and they don't bring in new players that are either well branded or have their own personal brands, people generally tend to lose interest. It is the same in traditional sports too. It's why Man City suddenly generated a huge international following, because when they had that huge investment from the Middle East, they started winning loads of games and winning the Premiership, and everyone loves to support winners. That is even more so the case in esports. People love to support winners, and that puts pressure on teams to retain the best players, making those players the most valuable assets to teams. If those players were to leave by having a disagreement or finding another team, often that means a loss of fan interest because people associate performance with those individual players. So what are the differences between traditional sporting teams and esports teams in terms of what they can and can't earn? Well, let's start with traditional sporting teams. They have stadiums so they can make ticket sales. They are tied to a location, which brings brand loyalty just because a location is immovable and people live there. High revenue share with very high advertising deals in those individual leagues, and the users are likely to spend more. There's also more of a universal appeal for traditional sports right now. And I want to back up the users likely to spend more with a bit of data from Newzoo. As you can see here, this is from 2017, but I think the point still stands. The average spend for an NBA fan on a yearly basis is $15. In 2017, the average spend of an esports enthusiast or an esports viewer was a third of that, $5.20. Your average esports fan is less likely to spend on things like merchandise as well as products, meaning that investments from advertisers and other companies looking to buy into the space need to be a little bit wary of the fact that actually it's harder to get your average esports viewer to part with their money. Let's have a look at some of the advantages of esports organizations though. They have lower operating costs. With no stadiums, they have nothing to maintain other than the gaming houses or gaming facilities that they choose to use. They have access to digital merchandise, and what I mean by that is merchandise available in-game. I'm going to take an example of the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League gives the opportunity for fans to buy Overwatch League team-themed skins in-game, and a portion of that revenue goes to the teams. This actually was hugely successful, and Overwatch League teams actually made more of a return on their investment than they thought they were going to in the first year alone, despite the Overwatch League numbers still being lower than that of League of Legends. Esports teams are also able to expand into multiple games, expanding their overall audience. And there is an opportunity for tech here for the esports teams. They have ways to innovate and expand that traditional sporting teams may not be able to do. A lot of the challenges that esports teams will face over the next 2 to 3 years is finding ways to monetize outside of the traditional sporting team methods. Some of the big backers and big investors in esports teams have come from that sporting industry and are trying to apply the same methods that they have success with in their traditional sporting teams to esports teams. What they are failing to do is utilize the fact that they have a truly global, tech-orientated brand at their fingertips. And with those esports teams comes those assets in the form of players, of which you can utilize for digital marketing. I know that teams already do, but this could probably be used to a greater extent. Giving the players freedom, giving them the opportunity to explore their own sponsors and taking a cut is another good opportunity. Fan experiences is something that the South Korean esports teams do a lot, but it's not really replicated in the Western modes, and I think that is something that would be core to building brand loyalty outside of player loyalty. Monetized content is a big one. It will be a touchy subject in the esports industry. A lot of people are used to the free content provided, for instance, the behind the scenes TV show videos, the content surrounding guides for individual games, content about how to become a pro player. A lot of this is being given away for free on YouTube, and most of the fans will be expecting that for the foreseeable future. But this is content that in a lot of ways often gets monetized or put behind a subscription model with other sports, and therefore esports teams are losing a revenue source by keeping this free. There is also the option for app-based solutions. I know that TSM are currently hiring a lot of UI designers, back-end engineers, and this could be a way to deliver content to fans, subscription models, deliver news to fans, find ways to advertise within app. These are things that you probably use on a daily basis to keep up to date with their favorite team, but also have the ability to increase the team's reach. And also mobile gaming. Mobile gaming accounts for nearly 50% of all game revenue in the world. So, teams need to utilize that. The Overwatch League skins were a success. Teams need to find a way to make mobile esports work so that they can utilize mobile gaming and in-game app revenue to help support their team. Imagine if a mobile esport went truly global and they introduced the same thing like skins to that particular game, or whatever way you want to integrate your esports team. They would potentially make a lot of money. It's very clear that esports teams need to increase their overall revenue. These valuations are way out of proportion to the actual money that these teams are making, and it feels like a lot of the investors are simply doing it because they have the fear of missing out, with the esports buzzwords ringing in the back of their ears. The challenge, like I said, for these teams will be achieving that goal and giving them the ability to make good returns on investment, which is what the investors want at the end of the day. Perhaps a fairer comparison is that of a circuit sport, so esports is more similar to the likes of F1, boxing or golf than it is to any of the American franchised leagues that I presented before. Now, I know there are franchise leagues now in esports, but the majority of esports is played on a circuit basis with events taking place across the globe. So if you talk about 90% of the esports structure being like this, we have to look about how those types of sports make money and how that translates into an esports setting. Golf, F1 and boxing all make money through pay-per-view, or they make money per viewer watching on the TV. TV per viewer revenue is much higher than online stream revenue, and because of the freedom of Twitch and how Twitch has pretty much dominated the market in terms of online viewing experiences, it's very difficult now to find a way to monetize your product when it is going out for free. This is a bit like why boxing moved away from the BBC. Sky invested a fortune, made it pay-per-view, and suddenly it's now one of the most profitable sports in the world, with boxers making ridiculous money. So there is an inherent problem in here in the way that we view esports, and because the monopoly is all through Twitch, and there are definitely other platforms trying to come in to change this up, but unfortunately esports viewers are so used to using Twitch and getting everything for free that it's actually very difficult to make that change, and that might be a change that needs to happen for the long-term sustainability of esports. So the final question to answer is, will the esports bubble pop? I think it's very unlikely. Esports is still growing year on year, and just because teams are struggling to meet revenue demands, every other aspect of esports is continuing to expand, including the audience. So, with the audience growing and esports as a whole growing, it's unlikely that the actual esports bubble is going to pop. What we can say is that esports teams are definitely going to need to find a way to increase their revenue. They are going to need to find a way to innovate and utilize the fact that they are truly global to try and increase the way that they make money and find better returns on their investments. Otherwise, I do feel that their valuations are going to decrease. I also think it's likely that esports is going to shift as a whole. I think you'll see a big move towards mobile platforms as they are increasingly popular, especially in the Asian market. I do also think that you're going to see a difference in the way that esports is broadcast. People are afraid to move away from Twitch because they know that most of the viewers and most of their audience use this platform. So either Twitch is going to make a shift to make esports a more monetization friendly, or you're going to see a new platform prop up that a lot of professional esports organizations are going to want to use because it will increase the revenue for everyone. This will be something that will be difficult for the fans to take, but it is something that is likely to happen to give the sustainability for esports in the long term. It's also worth noting that whilst teams are struggling to make a return on investment right now, the leagues and the league ecosystem is really good right now. So tournaments and leagues are getting huge investments, and things like the Overwatch League All Access Pass are giving good ways to get immediate returns on investment while providing value to the viewers. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Feel free to catch up with me on the next episode of Esports Insight. Otherwise, leave me a like and a comment, let me know what you thought, and I will see you soon.